Welcome one all, my name is Tawess and today we are doing something a bit more difficult. This is a Kingfisher and that is the base for the paint scheme of the Clan Ghost Bear Theta galaxy. For those unfamiliar with those, they have a blue flame pattern. Yeah, a blue flame pattern. So, in order to get a good flame pattern going, I started off with actually using a fine liner pen and drew the design onto the mech. Because, trust me when I say this, hand painting flames is hard. There's nothing wrong with cheating a little bit. You just get the nice curves down. Then of course you go on to actually painting them with regular paint because there's an upper limit to how much I want to cheat. I could technically have done it with alcohol inks if I wanted to, but we're gonna stick to hobby paints here. Because it can be done. Now the important thing when you're painting flames is of course to get a good solid base layer. Depending on how you want them done. You either start from a bright working down to a dark or from a dark working up to a bright. It doesn't really matter. It's a matter of taste, a matter of design, a matter of what you feel like. If you're going to do hyper realistic, that's a different thing. Then you have to actually look how flames work, and trust me, that's wild stuff. This is a very stylized flame. We are not doing anything even close to realistic here. This is hot rod levels of stylization of flame. But still, nonetheless, painting flames. So yeah, basically I drew with a fine liner out the outline of the flames on a white base coat. And then I fill this in with a dark blue in this case. I honestly think it is actually deep blue. The darkest of blues. It's not that dark. If it is anything I want to slap armor painters with, is that they don't have a good, really dark blue. It's easy enough to make on your own, but still, it would be nice to have a really dark, solid blue, because their dark blues are kind of washy. But yeah, same with the leg. It's the leg on the opposite side. Same thing there. Start with a fine liner. I use Sakura Micron, really good pens. But you can use any fine liner or soft tip pen. Because if you do, don't use ballpoint pens, because that's gonna scratch the paint away. Just saying. Some sort of ink pen is better. Or if you have a stable enough hand, you can just outline it with a wash and ink. That works too. But no ballpoint pens. So yeah, just laying down a solid base layer. And in this case, add a few little squigglies to represent flame embers. Just a nice touch. Just a nice touch, you know. But yeah. Next up then, we're going to start adding layers. And I do this backward thing when I start with dark layers and outside I work towards brighter in the inners. So mixing dark blue with some crystal blue, which is a really nice poppy blue, to get a mid-tone between these two, and then start filling in the base layer. Just make sure that you get close to the edge, but still leave a bit of darkest blue on the outside. Of course, again, here you can go as wild as you like. If you feel confident, you can wet blend it. I didn't feel that confident. But if you do, this is a great time to do that, because it's smooth, creamy smooth fade. But no, it all depends on, if you just want to do one layer, that is okay too. You can stop at the first layer and just leave it as hot rod flames. That works really good too. And there's no shame in that. Never ever let anyone tell you there's not any shame in that. You do what you think looks nice, feels nice. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Anyway, once we're done with that, we work our way up with adding some gargoyle. What is it called? Gorgon hide, which is a very bluish white-grey paint. I mix that into the crystal blue to get a nice light blue that I used to give some pop. It's a nice pop to the inner center of each flame. It's a bit hard to see on the camera because that light blows things out a bit, but it is there, trust me. And once that's done, I actually go over it one more time with some almost pure Gorgon hide and just put in some highlights because, you know, it's nice to have. But yeah, slowly work your way up several layers. That is just the way to do it. Now, one of the difficult parts with this is, of course, that very few mechs are entirely flat. They have nooks and crannies and crevices and weird angles of things. So sometimes you just have to keep your paint wet and hope for the best. I mean, you guess you can also in theory mask things off if you want to be really fancy, but who have time for that? If you want to practice this, I would recommend getting a mech with some big flat areas. Ironically, Marauders works really good for this because they're really nice flat areas. A catapult is also a good option for that. Or actually, believe it or not, the Atlas. Because the Atlas is very square in a lot of places. So these are nice mechs to practice this on if you want to do it live. Do not get a Locust and do this. I mean, you could, but I would not recommend it because tiny. Anyway, now the second standout thing with the Theta Galaxy is, of course, that the opposite leg and arm to the flame one is grey. And the center mech is white. So, as I mentioned before, I slapped this with some nice ash grey over some dungeon grey, just to get some slightly creamier colors in there. Now these two are fairly close in color, and to some degree they do blend a bit. So it's important here that you keep the brighter paint only to the oh my god, my brain stopped working entirely. Complete blue screen. That is interesting. The panels. Just keep the brighter grey on the panels, leave the darker grey in the receding areas, the crevices, the panel lines, stuff like that. You can also, if you feel that you're having a way too close thing, just do a wash in the middle. Keep just give it a dark grey first, then give the dark grey a wash with some black ink or wash of your choice, and then hit it with the bright. This will really make them pop. But I felt it would be a bit too poppy. It would almost be distracting. So I just wanted to have this sensation more than anything else. That is a difference in tone between the two things. But yeah, you can also push harder for a darker grey. I mean, it is in the end all up to you. Trying to get a good blend of the colors though. That's difficult at times. And that grey was not really cooperating. Let's see, my Army Painter paints are old, and some of them have separated something fiercely. Not much you can do about that. It's just this what it is. But yeah, sometimes I have to work really hard to actually try and get them to properly work. Now, going over the arm, of course, is also important. The arm is a bit easier because it has a bit more flat areas. And another good thing with this, if you are like me and hate doing the same thing over and over, is that you only need to do this on one arm and one leg. So there's no repeating of tasks. Sometimes when you do that, it can be like, oh god, I just got done with this leg, and now I have to do another leg in the same way. With this paint scheme, you don't need to worry about that. But the flames does make it a bit more time intensive. I mean, you want quick, you get an airbrush and paint things in Iridiani Light Horse, which is like basic flat green. Very quick to paint. Not very exciting, but very quick to paint. You will probably never see me paint that. But it's quick. We don't do quick here. No, instead we take one of the most time-intensive things to do is paint flames. Actually, you can do that pretty quick too. We just decided to do it the hard way. Anyway, as I said, maintain a good control of your brush here. Make sure you hit the panels and not the lines in between the panels, because then you have to put an ink over it, the wash over it, and start all over again, and that is annoying. Actually, if you have a good oil-based ink, I think you could technically just use capillary action to just have it draw into the lines, but then you have to deal with that instead. And I have no time or energy to deal with oil-based paints. But if you like it, that is also an option. I mean, yes, you could technically just dry brush it too if you're in a hurry. That would work too. Now, I did cheat a little bit, because between painting the flames and the rest of the mech, I felt it was a bit too one note, so I mixed up a bit of blue and black wash, added some water, 2 drops of water to that to dilute it, and then slap that on the entire mech. It's a thing you can do. It actually gives you a bit of contrast to work with. Now, you're just wrapping up with hitting it white, all the white, because, well, we have a lot of areas that should be white. Pretty much everything that isn't grey or flames should be white. And as I said, we're using Gorgon Hide for this, because it's a lovely, not really a white, but it reads as white very well. It doesn't have this almost glowing effect that matte white has. Because matte white, as much as I love it, can sometimes be a bit too white. If that's it doesn't photograph very well in some regards. Gorgon Hide still reads as white for all intents and purposes, but can also be highlighted with actual matte white. But you can use any off-white you want. Want a warmer model to contrast the blue flames? Use a more eggshell white, creamy white. Go wild, experiment. But yeah, just grinding through all the panels of the torso and the right arm. I was supposed to say left arm, but it's actually the right arm. Did not do this on the leg as much, because leg, I feel, should be more or less in shadow anyways, to some degree, because this arms and mech all over the place. But yeah, that is a really nice little mech. It turned out a lot better than I thought it was going to do. I have to admit, I did not have much confidence in my flame painting skills, but I was like, you know what, let's do this. And it turned out fairly well. Now, as we're starting to close in on the end of the video, we're going to do my regular What's Happened Next rants. And today I got the Urban and the Strike lance, which means a lot of lights and medium mechs. We're going to go through those later. We're not going to unbox the boxes, because at this point everyone has seen the boxes. But we have a Jenner, my beloved Jenner. I have only warm and fuzzy feelings for that thing from my time in MechWarrior Online. It's special. Also, there's a hunchback in there. I mean, that was one reason I picked one of the boxes up. It's a hunchback in it. We're going to paint that up in something crazy. We have a wolfhound. We're going to paint up as the Grinner, because you kind of have to. Anyway, we have now painted the cockpit gold, because on this mech it really works. And pretty much at this point the only thing is left is painting the weapons, silver as usual, and painting the feet. I'm not entirely sure I'm actually going to show painting the feet, because you're just slapping paint on a fairly basic area. Again, off camera I did add some wash, because I realized it needed it. First I thought, it looks good, doesn't really need the wash, but then I was like, no, it needs the wash. So I added the wash. A regular black wash. If you have low oil, use that. If you don't have low oil, use whatever you like. You can use diluted black paint. It doesn't matter. You do you. Now this is going to be a turntable this time because I have misplaced the cord for a turntable. So it's out of commission. So I'm just going to flip it in my hand later on. But it's like a decent look at what the mech is. So yeah. That is pretty much it. I hope this has helped you. And until next time. Stay safe. Be kind. And as always, do play fair. Bye.